All right, so to get back into this, what we have done so far is we first went in and we created this HTML file. There was really, should have been nothing that was in there that was new to anybody. All right, we've worked with virtually all this stuff that's in here before. All right. After we got done with that, we went in and we added some CSS, in particular, some margins, etc., to push things over, and that, you know, a little bit of coloring, etc. So when we got done and we ran this, again, ideally yours looks something now like this. All right. Now it doesn't do anything. I mean, you can put anything you want in here. All right. One thing I forgot to do, this should be disabled. Everybody see this? That should be disabled. All right. We want to gray that out. So how do we do that? We come back into our HTML and we find where the answer was right here. All right. And after we've got ID equal answer, we just put disabled. You spell it right, though. That'll help. All right. And just the one for the answer. All right. So go in there and make that disabled. And after we do that, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put in the associated JavaScript. This is the hardest. There's the most to type. All right. But it's the brains, so to speak, of what it is we're trying to do. Let's double check and make sure that that works. So when I run this, you'll notice that now that's gray. And if something is disabled, it is not possible for it to receive the focus. Did you hear that? All right. Probably when you run this, most people would probably set it up either they'd put a number there, then a number here, then they choose an operation, or number, operation, and then another number. All right. And then they would push one button or the other. What you can do in here, we didn't really go over this much when we talked about forms, but forms have a tab index. All right. I've set it up so that when the program starts, that's what's highlighted. But notice if I hit tab, it's going pretty much into the order I want it to go. It is because that's the order in which I put things on the screen. But you can set up a tab index. Why? Because some people like to iterate their way around a form by hitting the tab key. All right, so you can do that. Anything you can do to make the end user's job a little easier, you know, that's a good thing. All right, so whatever your editor you're using, again, oh, that's nice. There we go. Please go in and start up a brand new file because we're going to put the JavaScript in now. All right. One of the first things that I want to do, and you can do it from a lot of different places, but in my folder that's called Calculate, where did I put it? There's Calculator, but where's Calculate? I have to do it from here. So in my Calculate folder right now, I don't need this. I've got my index file and I've got my CSS file. All right, in my CSS folder. Okay, I want to add a JS folder, so I'm adding it from right here. Again, you don't have to do it from here, but I'm going to add that, and I'm just going to open that up, and inside of there I'm going to right mouse click and choose new text file or text document, and I'm going to put in there calculator.js, hit enter. It'll say, do you want to change the extension? Yes. So there it is, and now I can bring that up. So I've got an empty file. All right. However you want to do that. We're going to try to write good JavaScript. So we're going to start out with, right in line 1, with that use strict. All right. What that does is it'll put some checks in by the system so that if we try to do things we, quote, should not do, unquote, it will catch them. Now, the assumption is all variables will be declared before they're used. If we try to use a variable before we've declared it, we really should get an error message with this. All right. Now, what we do next, how we do it, etc. I'm going to work on mine from the top down. All right. So we're going to actually have stuff in there that will depend on code we haven't written yet because it's later on. Does that make sense to everybody? The order in which you do this stuff is totally up to you. But the first thing I like to do is I'm going to say create an alias for get element by ID. All right, and it's the same thing we looked at before. Var $ equals function ID, and it's simply return document.get element by ID. That's the whole thing. That is what's referred to in Java or JavaScript as a function expression. We are creating a new variable called $ that basically now is an alias, or it's another way of saying get element by ID. It's just a shortcut. All right, you saw all those stuff I went and looked and showed you earlier, how many times they used get element by ID. Well, again, do the math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. We are replacing 23 characters of typing with 1. All right? And that's often done. All right? Now, when we get into the jQuery part of the class in a few weeks, when we get in there, this is going to go away because jQuery uses the $ for something else. All right? All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is basically I want to say I'm assuming I'm going to create a routine called process entries. Again, I'm using exactly what they used for the one in the book on the miles per gallon. But what we're going to do, again, play computer here and look at the screen. This right there, that, okay, can't hold non-numeric values. Okay, can it hold negatives? Fine. Can it hold big numbers? Fine. I could have gone in there if I really wanted to and added constants and said maybe the biggest number you can type in is 100,000 or 1,000,000 or whatever. I didn't do that. So I'm sure it'd be possible to break this, because if I come in there and I do something like that and I multiply that by 999999999, it's probably going to be bigger than what that can hold. I'm not going to worry about that. All right? The other thing that I could have done, no one said this, but one thing I could have done is I could have come in here and in our HTML here, where we had number 1 and number 2, we said type equal text. We could have said in there type equal number. All right? Why? Because then the only acceptable value in there would be a numeric value. But I just left it off. Okay? You want to change that, you can. You certainly don't have to. All right, so I'm going to make another functional expression that's called process entries. And there's nothing special about these names. And that's going to be equal to a function that has no parameters. Oh, look up on the screen, please. I forgot to do something. This is a variable declaration. Everybody hear me? That's a variable declaration. What should we always put at the end of a variable declaration? A semicolon. All right? This one too, a semicolon. You see, but they're functions. Yeah, but they're being used as if they are variables. All right? So I'm going to put in a few lines of code. The first ones we put in here, I'm just going to declare some variables. And there should be nothing in here that surprises you. Let me put these 4 lines in. We'll make it true. Okay. The first two lines that you see in there that are in gray right now say grab the value that I put into the text box that has got an ID on it of num1 and put it into the JavaScript variable called num1. These are two different things. This num1 is what's in the text box. This is a JavaScript variable. So they can have the same name. In fact, normally they do. You don't have to make them the same name, but usually most people do. This will be the answer. So this is either me adding the two numbers, subtracting one from the other, multiplying, dividing, or modulo. All right, one of those 5 operations. This, I'm going to assume that all of my inputs are valid. I can either assume they're invalid and prove them valid, or I can assume they're valid and prove them invalid. Does that make sense? You know, it's how you decide to write the program. All right? So I'm going to go in here and make some checks. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to validate num1. And in just a couple minutes, I will validate num2. All right? And it's going to be the same code, except one of them will say num1 and the other one will say num2. So what do we want to do here? Well, the only thing I'm validating is I want to make sure that it's numeric. So what I'm putting up here in this code right now is stuff we're not technically getting into until chapter 6. And you have to learn to spell. And I'm going to just copy all of this. I'll come right back to it, but I'm going to copy every bit of this that's right here, and I'm going to paste it down here and just change all the num1s to num2s. All right, so this will be a 2, a 2, and a 2. All right, some of you type faster than others. Once you put that in, and I realize some of you are still typing, but once you put that in, go back and try to run your HTML page again. All right? Now I'm going to click calculate. Well, didn't give me anything, so I hit F12. It's not showing me any errors. That just means it doesn't have enough information to keep going. The good news is, though, there's no errors down here. So I know that, at least I'm pretty certain, that everything I put in so far is valid. Now, if you look up on the screen, even if you're typing, you'll have time to get it in. But if you look, what this is doing here, this thing that's right here, that, just so you know, you see it in 4 different spots. That's this. Everybody hear me? All right. Now, I don't expect that to make any sense because it's talking first child and note value and a bunch of stuff. But basically what it's saying is, hey, if I leave this, if this is non-numeric in here, change this message, get rid of the asterisk, and put in numeric input required. And do the same thing. If this is not numeric, get rid of this and put in the same thing. Numeric input required. That's what we're coding. All right? You reach a certain point as a programmer, you can only give a person so much information. All right? In other words, we're letting them know what they did wrong. There'll be a reset button later where they can reset things if they want to. If they choose to keep putting garbage in, we've got 2 choices. We can either let them keep putting in garbage, or after 2 or 3 or 4 bad attempts, we can kick them out. Isn't that kind of what they do when you log into most computer systems? You usually get about 3 times you can log in. And if you can't figure it out by then, it kicks you out. All right? So in some ways, at least, what I'm doing there is I'm doing authentication. I'm authenticating that the values that were put in to those 2 fields were indeed numeric. All right? Now, the other thing that I'm not checking, and I could have checked it in here, but I didn't, is I could have checked the reason that I put in there, choose an operation. I mentioned this earlier in the semester. It's like a lot of times if you've ever filled in anything for any kind of an internet form, and they've got state, a lot of times at the top they'll say something like, please enter state. Because if they don't do that, then the first state is just Alabama. And if you don't set your state, all right, then it's going to be, they think it's Alabama. All right. So I'm making you choose an operation, in other words, before you can actually complete this process. We haven't added that code yet, but we will later. So if we do this, all right, I left a little bit of code out, and I left it out on purpose. Looking at this, right there. It's the same as the other one, but let's just look at this one. All right? If the first case is true, does that mean I've hit an error condition? If that if is true, have I hit an error condition? I'm asking you that. Yeah. Yes? Okay. So, since I've got something that's called valid input, what should I be doing with that? Is it valid input anymore? If I go in there and I put in for the first number, hello, and it gives me this message, numeric input required, is my input valid or invalid? It's invalid. So I should come in here and say valid input equal false. And I should do the same thing down here. All right? So I just added line 19 and line 30. In both those cases, I'm saying, hey, there's a problem. And I want to make sure that I put it in both places. It's possible I enter one value that's numeric and one that's non-numeric. So I need them both in there. All right? If I get down to here, right here, and I say if valid input All right, if I say that, what does this mean? I'm asking you, if I get down to this point, what does it mean? In English, what does it mean? Look at this. What does it mean if valid input is set to true? What did I do on this form? I put in a number in both text boxes. Does that make sense? Because if I didn't, I'd set it to false previously. All right? So why does that matter? Because if it's valid like this, then I am ready to call another routine that we're going to write next that's called calculate answer. Which will need num1 and num2. That routine has not yet been written. We try to run this program now, we're going to get an error message because we're calling a non-existent function. What I'm concerned with is, does the logic make sense to everyone? Again, realizing that a computer has the intellect of an 18-month-old child. With an 18-month-old child, and I've got a 17-and-a-half-month-old grandchild, usually if I talk slow to her and I use little words, she can fairly understand what I'm talking about. But when I yell or use big words, she just looks at me like I've got a screw loose. So you've got to make this as simple for the system to understand as possible. All right? So in English, what we're saying here is, okay, we want to process this. So I want to take whatever we put into the first number and I want to convert it into a float. Then I want to take whatever we put into the second number and I want to convert it into a float. True or false? Either one of those values after line 10 and 11, either one of those values could be NaN. True or false? I'll agree with you. I'll disagree with you. What if I just put hello or left it blank? Isn't it going to be NaN then? It's going to try to do the parsing. Since it can't, it'll be NaN. So it is possible that either, once you get to line 12, either num1 or num2 or both or neither could be NaN. It's possible. All right? This will be the answer sooner or later. All right? And this is whether or not our checks worked or didn't work. Okay? I'm asking you this. Is there anything that I put into there that doesn't make sense? All right? Now that I think about it, I may be wrong. I don't think we're going to even need this variable here, but we'll see. Go ahead. Parse float is just like parse int, but it'll work on a number that has one decimal place in it.
So what's next sibling? Next element?
Okay, the next element sibling means that whatever comes after, in this case, whatever comes after that text box, which was that span where I put in the asterisk, that's it. Okay? And first child is what's inside of there.
So it will change it to that I.
It's going to change that asterisk to numeric input required. All right? We could put anything we wanted in there. All right? Okay, so we're going to calculate the answer right here. But we haven't written that routine yet. So that's what we're going to write next. We're going to write it very similar to the way we just wrote the other one. So I'm going to come in here, var calculate answer equal function. Now I have to put values in here. I have to put values in here. Why? Because up here I passed in num1 and num2. So these don't have to have the same name. I could call them N1 and N2, A and B, whatever I wanted to. I'm just going to give them the same name. So I'm going to put in here num1, comma, num2. All right. Now what I'm going to show you next, probably, hear me, probably, so far I have handled this and I've handled this. I didn't handle this. I chose to do that now. I probably should take the code I'm giving you. I probably should have moved it up earlier into the last routine. All right, it'll work the way it is, but it'll look a little funny once we get it all done. All right, if you say I don't know what you mean, then just hold on. You'll see it in a few minutes. All right, so the good news is when we get done writing the code that's in here, we only have about 5 or 6 more lines to write. All right? Now, just so you know, this thing, it's like, what the heck is this? That right there, everything that we're talking about here with IDX, that's going to be which of these did I pick. If right now I've selected choose an operation, then the selected index is 0. Remember, sometimes computers start counting with 0. So that would be an index of 0, an index of 1, an index of 2, an index of 3, an index of 4, an index of 5. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm setting this variable called IDX, short for index, equal to whatever the index is. I could have called it index. Could have called it I. All right? But a lot of times people for index use IDX, which is why I did. All right? Then the next line, so that's what this is right here. I'm saying figure out which index is the current one. This is going to be the result of me either adding the two numbers, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, modulo. That's what that is. Res is short for result. All right? This says, okay, I want to make sure that whatever is in here goes away. I don't want that there. Because it's either going to be blank or it's going to say you must choose an operation. It's going to do one or the other. If I've chosen something in here that's not choose an operation, so if I've chosen the plus sign or the minus sign or the multiply sign or the divide sign or the modulo sign, I want this to be blank. If it's still stuck at choose an operation, I want this to say you must choose a valid operation. All right, so that's what we're about to do. So trying to explain to you exactly what's going on in here. All right. So I'm switching on the index. Again, I want to make sure you get this as much as you can. This index is going to be one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values. All right. But since we're a computer, we start counting at 0. So index will either be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Does that make sense to people? That's what we're switching on. We know it has to be one of those. All right? When you are a web developer, the more things that you can create with drop-downs like this, the less the chance somebody's going to screw it up. You can't do everything. You can't have name be in a drop-down because you have to list every name there is. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. All right? But something like this, it makes sense to do it this way. So I'm going to switch. All right, I'm switching on my index. If I've got a case of 0, all right, still says, what was that it said? Choose an operation. All right, so if that's 0, that's what it says. So what do I want to do? Okay, I want to grab this thing that's right up above here, but I don't want it to be empty. I want it to say, you must choose an operation. Again, if you don't like my verbiage, use your own. I'm not offended. And once I'm done, there's, what else do I want to do? Well, I want to make sure that if for some reason there was a result in there, I'm just going to set it equal to 0. All right, that shouldn't even happen, but I'm just doing it to try to be safe. And then break. All right. If it's not 0, look on the screen, please. If it's not 0, it's either a plus or a minus or a multiply or a divide or a modulo. Correct? There's nothing special I have to do for plus other than add them. Nothing special for subtract other than subtract them. Nothing special for multiply other than multiply them. I do want to put my own check in for these two because I don't want to let you divide by 0 because that's infinity. I don't want that to happen. I think that's dumb. All right? Not every calculator will do that. If we'll show you INF or infinity or whatever. Some will give you an error when you try doing things you shouldn't do. So, the next thing then is case 1. And that, what does that mean? Plus option selected rather. It's pretty darn simple. All right, because all I want to do is I want to say my result is num1 plus num2 and break. That's pretty easy. In fact, come in here, hit enter. I'm going to just copy this twice. Okay, so if it's a 2, I know that they selected minus, and that's got to be a minus sign. And if it's a 3, I know that they've chosen multiplication, and it's a multiply. That's pretty easy. So now 60%, really 66.6% of my calculator is done. Because I'm now being able to handle addition, subtraction, multiplication, all right? But I have not yet put in my work for division, and I have not yet put in my work for modulo. And we'll do that next. These two routines that we're going to do next, the code that I'm going to put in here, is virtually identical. Except when I divide, I use the slash. When I do modulo, I use the % sign. So would it have been possible for me to combine that into one routine? The answer is yes. But it may have been more confusing. So I didn't do that. Are there any questions? So this should say minus, and this should say, yeah, it does. Any questions on what any of this stuff here means? This is your time to ask. I will tell you, this will be your test on Tuesday. You will either have 3 things to do or 4. All right? With one of them, there will be something like this, and you've now got a template you can use. All right? And I won't expect you to do the stuff with the asterisks and the nodes and stuff. I won't expect that. Instead of that, you'll just use alerts. If you're like, no, I like that stuff, I want to use, then use it. If you use it and do it wrong, I've got to take off. All right, but if you just want to use alerts, that's going to be fine. So there'll be one problem, in a second, one problem similar to this one. That'll be number 1. you will have a program that I put in there that has 5 to 10 errors in it. You will have to debug that program. That's 2. All right? Then you will probably take one of the 2 programs, I don't know which. Let's just say it's the BMI one. And I will make you rewrite that in a modular way. And then the other program, the guessing game, you'll rewrite that more like this one with function expressions. Why? Because that's what we've done in the last 2 chapters. There's not really anything else to test you on. Question?
I know in our mindset we know that res means result, but how does the computer know if we haven't like classified it as an ID as res or anything like that?
Right there.
Yeah, but how does the computer know that we're meaning the result button?
It doesn't yet.
Oh, okay.
That we'll have to do later.
Okay.
All right. So I've got left case 4. And again, for case 4, that's going to mean that the divide button or option was selected. And after I get done with that, I'll need case 5. And for that, that's going to mean the modulo option was selected. Now, I got code I've got to put under each one of these, but I just want to show you. That's what I've got left to do. All right? So the way I decided to attack this was I said, hey, if the number that we put in there was not 0, do the divide. Otherwise, we want to put a message into here it's for number 2, into here that says illegal attempt to divide by 0. All right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say this. If num2 is not equal to 0, res is equal to num1 divided by, num1 divided by num2. All right? Else means I know that there was a mistake. All right? I put a 0 in there. So I want to go and grab this thing. And I want to set it equal to illegal attempt to divide by 0. Now it's kind of big, so I'll make this a little smaller so you can see everything. The good news is, when I get done with this, there'll be a break. All right? But the good news is, I'm going to do the exact same thing for case 5. The only difference is, instead of saying divide right here, I'm going to put a modulo sign. So I'm just going to copy this, put that down here, and make this one a modulo. All right? That should be everything, as far as I know. Now I get to answer Mr. Hardy's question, which was, how does that know what the heck res is there? That's what we're going to do next. Now we have a result. All right, we either have a result, all right, and I could have, now that I'm looking at this, and I didn't spell divide right. Okay, I could have come in here and set result to 0. You know, maybe that would have been a little cleaner to say res equals 0 here and here, or even set it equal to nothing. All right. But what I want to do now, again, like I said, to answer Chris's question, is now when I'm done with my switch statement, now I'm going to say that's where we take the result that we figured out, and that is where we put it into the text box for answer. So hopefully, Chris, that answers your question. We have 2 more things that we have to do, not 2 more lines of code. There's about 10 lines, maybe 12 lines of code. But the first thing is, right now, we've handled the case when we click that button. We have not yet handled the case when we click that button. We want to reset the form. When we reset the form, think about what we want to do. We want there to be nothing here. We want there to be nothing here. We want there to be nothing here. We want these asterisks to come back. And we want this, let's say it said that, we want it to say choose an operation. Plus, it's kind of nice, we want the cursor to be laying right there. Does that make sense? All right. So that's about, I don't know, 8 lines of code, 9, I don't know. But let's put them in. So these 3 lines that we have right there, if you look on the screen, these 3 lines, lines 95, 96, and 97, that will clear out this, and this, and this. All right? You are at the point, I believe at least in your careers, that should make sense to you. All right? The next thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that when I come in here, this has been reset to choose an operation. The way I do that is I want to set the index back to 0. So that shows. That's the 0th index. Then the other thing I want to do then is bring back those asterisks. All right? And then put my cursor in here. So let's do those. And then there's like 5 lines, so I'm just going to type ball in. Then we'll go over all of it after that. Oops. That's it. Again, we have not gone over chapter 6 yet. So anything that's in here that's got node value, etc., you would not be expected to do for a test. We would probably replace that with alert boxes. But this is much cleaner than an alert box. Now, it is possible that when I keyed something in, I made a mistake. I sure wouldn't try to do that, but I make more than my share anyway. So let me just check. I'll come right back to the code if you're still copying it down. But let's run this. All right, well, something's goofed up. I put numbers in there, and it's saying numeric input required. So there's something in there it doesn't like. Not sure what it is. All right. I'll have to fix that. Is my reset working? Well, that is, except those didn't come back. All right. So I know there's problems, in other words. And I'll have to check on those in just a minute. Okay, this is what, nope, that was correct. Num1, num2, yeah, those are both. Oh, these, I wanted asterisks in, so that's why those didn't work. So that should be an asterisk there, and there, and there. So that'll fix that problem. All right, so again, make sure you go into these 3 lines that are in gray. I had you just put double quote in there. Change them to double quote, asterisk, double quote. Okay. Now let's say it's the end of the period and you're walking out of here and you've got the deer in the headlights look and you're like, all right, we went over all this garbage today and I didn't understand a flippin' thing he did. Then I would go back to start with, I would go back and reread chapter 4. It's the first thing I do. And if you say, well, I don't have time. All right, I shouldn't say this because it's being taped. Tough crap. Then make the time or suffer the grade. All right? Because if you want to understand it, I can only add to what's in the book. I can't replace it. So if you are really confused, that's a place to start. So you go back. Devin's having some problems. Let's just pretend. He's not, but let's just say he is. So he goes back, he rereads it, and he says, I'm still having problems. Then I go back to this program we just did, go back to the JavaScript, and start commenting stuff out to see what happens. And if he still has questions, then I'd start writing some more comments in there than I put in. I didn't put a boatload of comments in here. It's already 110 lines. So let's see. There's still issues with this. I understand that. So, well, it's not giving me my message here. It is removing those, but it's not giving me my message. I don't need an asterisk there. I can remove that. Resetting is bringing those 2 back, but it's not bringing this one back. So there's problems in here. So I'm going to have to go and take a look at it. All right. And also, if I do put in valid numbers, you know, it shouldn't be giving me that. So I did something wrong. I do want you to see. I mean, this is the one I worked off of. This is the one that I did yesterday. So if I could find that. All right, so 34 plus 8. See that it works. All right, when I reset, see how those come back. If I leave this all set up like this, I get that numeric input. When I do put in numbers, and if I leave this, I get my, you must choose an operation. So Well, everything is working. Either I didn't key in something that I should have, or I did key in something that I shouldn't have. So I'm going to go back and start taking a look through my code. This is the process of debugging. All right? I know that there are problems in the code. Now, probably it's on me because probably I put in too much code and then stopped and gave you an explanation. All right? So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look. First thing I'm going to do is where I have the button here. Let's see. Number 1, number 2, and answer. Okay. I'm looking here. I want to see where that extra asterisk was. There's 1, 2, 3 asked 1 for number 1, 1 for there, 1 for there, and the answer I don't need an asterisk, so I can get rid of this. That'll remove that asterisk, but that's not an error. That's just something I put in that I didn't have to put in. All right. So start looking at the code then. All right. I'm just going to go back and map this up to my code. Okay, look on the screen if you would. This is wrong. Right now it says if not is a number. I want to do that if that's true. Those should both be if is NaN. I love that when I can have kind of a teaching moment by doing my own screw-ups. All right, which is what those were. Those were logic errors. The program still ran, it just wasn't correct. This should have said if is NaN, not if not. I want to do this if it's not a number. But I was doing it now when it wasn't a number, and I was doing this if it was a number. In other words, I inverted the logic. So this should be if is NaN here and here. Let's see if that changes anything. Well, it's better, and I'm getting an answer. The answer is not right, but I'm getting an answer. All right? Didn't blow up. My reset's working here. There's still a problem with a reset right here. Try to have to fix that. But it's better than it was. All right? So there's still things that are wrong. So keep working our way through here. Yes.
I don't know if it matters, but in your process entry function, you put an answer variable.
Yeah, I don't think we need it.
Yeah.
But that's why I originally put it in here too, right there, but I never used it. So if I have to, I'll just remove that line. Good. Oh, right there. Yeah, there shouldn't be a 1 there. That's why that asterisk isn't coming back. That's good. That's a good spot. So you're giving me ideas now for what to put on the test for when I, yeah. Now, one thing that I could do, if you'd all take a look up here for a second, please. Okay, now everything should be done. So one thing I could do is I can put an alert in here. And I can say, you don't have to do this, but just so you know, the value in the num1 text box is plus $ num1 dot value, all right, plus \n, oops, plus, and I want to repeat everything in here except say num2. So the value in the num2 text box is, and that'll be a 2. The value in the, I don't know, I can say, how about operation drop down, which is my drop down list. Okay, when do I put these in order? And that's not going to be right here, so that's going to be IDX. All right, and then finally, the value in the answer text box is, oops, that wasn't good. What is going on here? All right. This is just a way of debugging, that's all. And that is what? That's answer. So let's see what happens when I do that, because I'm not getting the right answer. $23, the operation is undefined, so that's a problem. 13, and the value is 0. Well, it's 0 because that operation isn't working. That's why I'm getting 0 there. So the problem is with this thing. There is an error someplace in the code that handles that operation. Not sure what it is, but there is an error in there someplace. So again, I just go back and I start looking at my code. And I can't tell you, It would have been nice back in the day when I was a programmer. We didn't have Google. All right. So what happened was when you had a problem with your code, you went and looked to see if you had anything similar that you'd done previously. If you didn't, you'd do Ask a Buddy. Hey, I've got this error. Have you ever seen anything like this? And you'd hope that she or he had some code that you could look at. All right. Well, if you look on here, everything is getting set, but for some reason, that index, that line of code, and it looks to me like the same stuff I put in before, is not working. I'm trying to figure out right now why it's not working. Okay, there is a line missing here in the reset that should tell it to reset the index for the operation. That should be reset to 0. So that should have been put in there. That's still not fixing the problem, though. That's not working now. No, I'm not getting an answer. All right, I'm not sure what I did, but it now works. All right, so I'm just going to leave that up there so you can take a look at that if you want. I don't know what I changed, but it now works the way that it's supposed to. Oh, I just was playing around with a bunch of stuff, so but that should not matter at all. If you think it will, then you change it, you know what I mean? But it shouldn't. Those are those are copies that it's working with anyway. But one way I can tell real fast whether or not that was it would just be to come in here and say change all n1s back to num1, change all n2s back to num2. Okay, they should all be changed now. Num1, num2, num1, num2, looks like it. The hell is that? Pardon me? Well, that is what I had for today. All right. If nothing else, I'll go through all my code and maybe give you a hard copy tomorrow of just the JavaScript. The other stuff everybody shouldn't have had any problem with. All right. It's 10:52. If you want a break, take a break. We've been going at it for an hour and 15 minutes. So.